What is a wheelchair accessible vehicle? A guide to safety, standards and conversion. A wheelchair accessible vehicle is designed to allow a wheelchair user to travel in a vehicle without having to leave their wheelchair. The wheelchair is typically brought into the vehicle via a ramp or lift and then secured using an appropriate restraint system, allowing the passenger to travel safely as part of the vehicle's seating arrangement. At first glance, that sounds straightforward. But is there a more important question? For example, what is the difference between a vehicle that has simply been adapted to accommodate a wheelchair and one that has been professionally designed, engineered, tested, and approved as a wheelchair accessible vehicle? Why does testing and vehicle approval matter? Many wheelchair accessible vehicles operating on UK roads have been converted under whole vehicle type approval. The system provides a framework for ensuring that vehicles meet defined safety and construction standards. For anyone buying or using a wheelchair accessible vehicle, the important point is not simply what the vehicle looks like. It is knowing that it was designed, converted, and approved by experts who put the wheelchair passengers' safety and comfort at the heart of what they do. What happens before a wheelchair accessible vehicle is built? A professionally developed WAV starts long before a ramp is fitted or a wheelchair enters the vehicle. A vehicle converter working within the type approval system must demonstrate to the Vehicle Certification Agency, VCA, that it has the appropriate facilities from where they can manufacture wheelchair accessible vehicles. They must also demonstrate they have technical competence and the necessary quality systems required to manufacture compliant vehicles. There is another important relationship too. A converter who is building a WAV under type approval will generally need approval or agreement from the original vehicle manufacturer to carry out conversions on their vehicle models. This means that the conversion process is not simply a matter of modifying a vehicle after it has left the factory. It involves engineering considerations that need to work alongside the design and characteristics of the original vehicle. And this is one of the reasons choosing an experienced converter is so important. Designing a safe WAV. Developing a WAV is a substantial engineering exercise. The converter has to research and design a conversion that works with the underlying vehicle to give them the solution they want, as well as changes to the floor and seating arrangements. They will introduce wheelchair restraint systems, a ramp or lift installation, and other components. The finished vehicle then needs to demonstrate that it meets the relevant requirements through testing and certification. When people think about vehicle safety testing, they often picture crash test dummies inside vehicles being subjected to dramatic impact tests. Those tests are certainly part of the wider automotive safety world, but developing a compliant WAV where the crash test dummy is in a wheelchair involves much more than just a single crash test. The interaction between the original vehicle, the conversion, the wheelchair, its restraint system, and the passenger all have to be considered. Why are wheelchair accessible vehicles sometimes more expensive? One of the questions often asked about wheelchair accessible vehicles is why they can be more expensive than an equivalent standard vehicle. The answer lies partly in what happens before the vehicle reaches the customer. Developing and certifying a new conversion requires significant investment in engineering, design, testing, tooling, and certification. That investment then has to be reflected in the cost of manufacturing individual vehicles. There is also the cost of producing the conversion itself. Components have to be designed, manufactured, fitted, and tested to a standard that allows the finished vehicle to perform as intended. This helps explain why some wheelchair accessible vehicles have substantial advance payments when available through schemes, such as Motability. The price is not simply paying for a ramp or a lowered floor. You are paying for the engineering and testing behind the complete vehicle. The cost of choosing a cheaper wheelchair accessible vehicle. Cost is understandably important when buying any vehicle, and for many people, affordability is a major consideration. However, when comparing wheelchair accessible vehicles, it is worth asking what you are actually comparing. A cheaper conversion may appear attractive on paper, but the critical question should be, what has been done to achieve that price? Professional vehicle converters invest heavily in research and development as well as testing and certification, because vehicle modifications can have significant consequences in the event of an accident. A wheelchair passenger travelling within a vehicle is heavily reliant on the vehicle, the wheelchair restraint system, and the safety of the conversion to perform correctly. This is why buyers should consider more than the purchase price. Ask who designed the conversion. Ask what approvals it has. Ask whether the converter has the appropriate technical expertise. Ask what testing has been carried out. And, importantly, ask whether the vehicle and conversion meet the standards you would expect for something responsible for protecting a passenger. Ensure your next WAV is a safe wheelchair-accessible vehicle. A wheelchair-accessible vehicle is not just about getting a wheelchair user into a vehicle. A wheelchair-accessible vehicle should be a vehicle that puts safety first and follows that comfort and usability. A properly engineered WAV considers the complete journey of each wheelchair user, getting into the vehicle, positioning the wheelchair, securing the wheelchair and passenger, travelling comfortably, and ensuring that the vehicle performs appropriately in normal use and in the event of an accident. If you would like to do more research to get the best wheelchair accessible vehicle to suit your needs, check out our Questions Customers Ask section or phone us using the phone number at the top of the page. Thank you.